So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. So, this is the first episode of the third series of, third season of the Immersive Theatre of Learning, the place where the power of learning meets the magic of theatre. And we have not one guest, not two guests, not three guests, but four guests today. So, all the way from Berlin, or in Berlin right now, Aisha Chaudhry. Hello, good evening. We have Shabeena. You're currently in Lisbon. We have Ryan, who's in Prague. And we have Rahaf, who is based in Heidelberg, just like B. Have you actually met in person, B and Rahaf? Okay. Are you neighbors? Not really.
Yep, close enough. Close
Close
enough.
enough. Yeah, I always have I will see it next week. I will see Heidelberg next week because we're planning an event there. But I always see it as a very, very small town where everybody knows each other. But I think it's actually quite big, no? Do you know how many inhabitants you have in Heidelberg?
How many people we have in Heidelberg?
Yes.
I did see it somewhere once, but I like to say, don't start me to lying.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is on record. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. We'll look it up. Everybody looks it up later on. Well, I would like to start with something that I have here. Don't know if anybody can see this. This is garam masala. And my first question goes to Aisha. What is garam masala?
Garam masala, when you eat it, creates an explosion in your mouth. And then when you close your eyes, the pictures that you see are like fireworks.
So
And it's like that for me every single time.
I'm not going to try this now, but it's actually a blend of different spices. And it's typical for South Asia, it's typical for Pakistan, for India, for Bangladesh, and many other places. And I heard there are local recipes, but I learned from your book that every household can actually have their own garam masala, so you can actually make it yourself. And that gave me the idea for our ice melter today, because every time we have these sessions, there is an opening question to everyone, including the speakers. And so Shabeena, when we prepared the session, she had the idea of, what's the thread between all the people that you have invited? Because I didn't know. And she said, well, everybody blends different worlds, right? So it's blending different worlds. And then this garam masala thing came up, and I thought, my first question is, what is your garam masala? So, what are the worlds you are blending? What are the different traits, the different cultures, the different skills you bring together in your work or in your life? Because I think all of us here in the room do that to some extent. Probably needs 1 or 2 seconds of reflection. And I don't think we have to go into breakout rooms because we're a nice group here. I can see everybody on the screen. And whoever feels ready, just jump in. And don't feel it has to be deep.
I'm happy to start.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Wow. It's a multi-layered question, because if I want to think of the worlds, it's different than the skills, it's different than the, but I will just talk about, different things. I think wonder is one of the ingredients that I bring in my blend. I've always been curious about things, and that drove my journey in life from one place to the other. And also, like, I've been always blessed with courage. So I want to add that to the blend as well. Courage has allowed me to explore different worlds, connect with different cultures, different people, connect with myself on multiple phases because we go through a lot through our journey. And then I would say connection. This is what gives it all meaning. And adaptability. I find myself pretty flexible in a sense. I think it's a mix of things, but yeah. That's probably my mix.
Beautiful mix. And also we're in the theme of learning here, and I think all four of them are really important for learning, right? So the idea of wonder, and it's a big part in my book as well, that I keep talking about these boring institutions that call themselves schools and universities, where the word wonder is not really something that is really there. So people don't have awe or wonder or surprise and so on. Everything seems to be linear.
Absolutely. And joyfulness as well. That's a very, I'm sorry, playfulness is a very
Yeah,
important piece of my existence.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. So Aliona just came in. Hello, good evening, good morning, maybe where you are.
Hello, thank you. I'm sorry, I was just in the middle of a painting project. I will join you in video soon, but I'm
Okay, no problem.
listening carefully.
In all the colors you want. Uh, we are, because we're talking about blends, and we're talking about garam masala as the metaphor. Garam masala is a mix of spices, and so it's a metaphor of the mix that makes us the person we are. So what do we blend in our lives? So different cultures, different trades, different worlds, different skills. So Rahaf just kicked it off with wonder, courage, adaptability, connection, and I missed one.
Playfulness.
Playfulness. Yes, wonderful. Okay, who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Great.
So I think first a little backstory. Bernd, when you asked the question, I tend to make curries a lot, etc. So I've got a little spice. Aisha, I don't know if you've got one, a little spice dubba, right, with all the little spices. So I was starting to think, oh, what can I like put in the pot in a way with the little labels? So I was like, oh, I'm gonna put a bit of like playfulness in there, a bit of curiosity, a bit of creativity, a lot of exploration. And then you got to have like the dynamite spices, right? So, so my dynamite spices, just to put a little kick in there, is stubbornness, incredibly stubborn. I love it. I wear it like a badge of honor. But stubbornness and clumsiness as well. You can't get away from it. So those would be definitely my spices that I throw in there.
Have you ever worked as a clown?
No, I'm a bit scared of them.
Because I could think of, stubborn, clumsy,
Totally
as
stubborn.
part of humor. And so B is an expert in humor. And so stubbornness and clumsiness, they're great ingredients for
Oh
creating
yeah.
something funny.
Let me chuck that in. Sorry, I'm gonna chuck that in. I'm gonna chuck in some humor, the ability to laugh at yourself. Because if you're
Absolutely.
clumsy, you need a bit of that as well.
Great. So B, we already mentioned you. So what is your blend?
Yeah, I was thinking this would be a good time to come in. So my blend is also humor, using humor and communication to to be adaptable when you're in different types of conversations. I also am looking at creativity and creating space for people. I also enjoy creating spaces. So my mix is sort of an eclectic hodgepodge of wanting to bring people together in a multicultural, you know, multi-generational, however we can come together. So when I cook, I say I'm not a cook, I'm a cremator. So I tend to just put things together and see how what comes out of it, what are the different essences that come out of just putting things together. So I enjoyed that the most. That's my mix. Everything together all at once.
Wonderful. Sounds like me cooking. So I can never cook the same thing twice because it's complete improvisation and
That's a great word.
it is it's a
Improvise.
piece of art. It can be wonderful or it can be awful, but it's always a unique creation. Right. Thank you very much, B. And how about Carolyn? What is your mix?
Well, my mix is, I've been thinking about this recently of doing a little blog about what I learned from each job and what it brings me now. I'm basically cross-cultural trainer, language coach. I have taught languages. So if I start back with my job, I've been a swimming instructor, a secretary, hostess in a Japanese nightclub, and I was illegal at that point too. And then the more traditional ones, language teacher, trainer, etc., and administrator. But I think I've learned, and selling encyclopedias door to door in an American military housing area in Germany. That was really illegal. Got picked up a couple of times by the MPs, but they just wanted to talk to me. I didn't get any trouble. But anyway, a lot of them, I was a little bit of a fraud. And that is what I kept bringing to my work, because often I just wasn't quite ready, but I just jumped in, and sometimes I knew I wasn't ready and sometimes I didn't. I thought I was. So I just kept going. I did end up doing a good job, but that's kind of my garam sala.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And for those who just came in, I don't know if you received the brief. So this is all about our coming out. So we're confessing everything illegal that we've done in our lives. No, we're just talking about the different things we bring together in our work, in our lives. I don't want to put the new joiners on the spot because you just came in, but I would love to hear from Alex.
Thank you, Bernd. I think I would be a can in this in this situation, and I'm I don't know, just curious about everything, so I'm acting as a vessel to put everything in. But talking about, I guess, my life, I think the best mix would be probably this intercultural crazy geography of my family, because I'm like Russian speaking originally from Siberia, having like English pen name, married to Estonian, father to a Mexican, and let's see where it's gonna go, right?
Absolutely. Fantastic. And okay, so we've heard from almost everybody, but not from two of our speakers. Let's come to Ryan and then let's come to Aisha because she's going to kick it off later on, talking a little bit about her book. So Ryan, what is your blend?
You know, I really must say I resonated with Carolyn because I share a varied past. My sister often tells me, Ryan, how many lives have you lived? There's a Czech proverb from the Czech language that says, as many languages you know, that's how many lives you've lived. But in my past, I've worked for Apple Computers in their software division. I've been a nurse. I used to work for Nissan as a mechanic in their I mean, you name it, and I've done it. Clean toilets in New York City. I used to be a window cleaner. I mean, all the way up to the highest levels of the insurance corporation, the largest insurance company. So you name it, and I've really done it. And so I was thinking, like Carolyn, as we are helping our learners to grasp these foreign ideas and connect all of these foreign sounds and kind of help them to navigate this new language journey that they're on, I was thinking that my masala, I'm pulling from different careers that I've had in the past and kind of putting a little bit of spice from breaking down the grammar like a mechanic breaks down an engine and puts it back together with no missing bolts or nuts or anything. Or I was also thinking kind of like that nurse. Sometimes the learner's heart is involved and it takes a special care because maybe they can't focus on learning at that moment. They just need a little TLC, right?
Mm.
A figurative or emotional hug, as it were, before they can actually move on to learn something. So we're kind of like making our masala from our past experiences and transferring that unique wisdom over to our learners. So interesting. I appreciated Carolyn's experiences, and B and Alex and the rest of them also kind of added in there.
Fantastic. Aisha, what is your masala?
I feel like I should just read what I wrote in my book. Actually, why not, eh? Why not? Any objections? Any objections?
No.
Let's just put some brightness into the room, also I can actually read with my reading glasses now that I'm of a certain age, which is like 12 in my head. Okay, here we go. My mum would say, could you go and get some frozen ginger and garlic from the freezer? And I would find it, bringing it over to her while she cut up tomatoes and onions for mixing it in her blender. Who's got a blender at home? Hey? Hands up, hands up. Yeah, see? Yeah, see? The large batches of fresh-smelling coriander and mint would be cut by hand. Garam masala is a combination of ground spices that is most likely found in every South Asian kitchen. Garam means hot, while the masala means mixed spices. That's the key point. Usually after a trip to Southall, which is sort of a bit like Chinatown, but in the UK, Mum would get us to help her separate out the peel from the cardamom pods, and we would then gather the cumin seeds, coriander seeds, black peppercorns, cloves, cassia bark, and mustard seeds for her to make her own garam masala. And whenever she finished blending the spices, I would see what the combination of them smelled like. Oh, the smell gave me a feeling of nourishment, even nurtured, because it came from Mum. I was absolutely convinced that Mum's dishes tasted better than anyone else's meals because of the homemade garam masala. And up to now, I haven't managed to quite recreate the same taste using the same mixture of spices in my Asian food.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that is an extract from your book, Family Matters. And it's a fascinating book. It's the subtitle is A Daughter's Memoir of Laughter to Loss and Laughter Again. I don't want to give away too much. And you're going to talk about a very serious matter, a cause, and something that is actually also quite sensitive, a sensitive subject. But Aisha, you always manage to do this with a big smile, and you always manage to do this with so much good humor. I remember being in a session with you, and the title was Managing Loss and Grief or something. And you wanted me to come, and I said, I'm not grieving anything. Doesn't matter, come anyway. And it was such a great session. And so we both met as emotional geographers. We never met in person, but many times online. And so, yes. Aisha, take it away.
Thank you, Bernd. That was a lovely introduction. And it's also really nice to listen to what each of your garam masalas is, although I don't think we heard from a couple of people, but it's okay.
I didn't want to put the new joiners on the spot,
That's
but
okay. That's okay. I think the way that we met through MA was through really the idea of storytelling, because it was during the COVID pandemic years. And when I met Bernd, actually not in real life, it was through a session in Clubhouse, and we were talking about storytelling. And I introduced you then to the concept of MA, which is eliciting and managing your emotions. And although I didn't say what my garam masala is, generally I thrive off humor and try to provide comfort and stability in really difficult times. And it's not something I intended to do, but I found myself doing during the pandemic years. And it was during those years that I noticed everyone seemed to be having a bit of a breakdown, which is fair enough, a very big wobbly, because nobody knew what was going on. And I was thriving, thinking, why am I doing absolutely well? And I realized it's because I'd already had a difficult time happen to me and my family. And that's what I'm just going to show you with the slides I presented. I'm trying not to make it boring, and I'll try and be really quick because, you know, if someone just takes ages, then like it's a bit boring. Plus, we all want to go make our dinner with our garam masala later, don't we? Yeah. So I'm just going to share the screen, but Bernd's quite right that the topic is not really a cheerful one, but nevertheless, the reason I'm cheerful is because I'm in life and I'm living it. And like they say, you've got your birth date and your end date, and the bit in the middle is the dash. I didn't make that up. I'm living that dash because my heart is beating and I'm super grateful for it. And yeah, regardless of the fact that I might have had a bad day yesterday, today, right here, right now, I feel great. So, so I'm just going to share my story and explain to you a bit about myself and why I wrote my book. Can you see that?
yes.
Cool. Now let's just go to the slideshow bit. There we go. Play from the start. And let's just move this down here, see if anything comes. Look, I've put in the immersive theatre of learning. That's where we are today because we want to learn a bit. That's kind of cool. Thank you, Bernd, for creating that. I wrote this book, as Bernd explained. It's called Family Matters. The reason I've got it in yellow is because that's kind of my happy colour. And it's important to me, she says without being able to turn the next, there we go. It's important to me to try to sort of remain optimistic during what can be difficult times. I'm a Chaudhry, which is about as common as the surname Schmidt in Germany or Smith in the UK, or possibly the US, I'm actually not sure. And of course I come from a very intercultural mixed background. So my dad was born in India in 1945, and just after the partition, when India was split into a number of different countries, it became then Pakistan and later on Bangladesh. So my mum, she was born in what was then Pakistan, and the families didn't really know each other that well. But after the partition, my dad's family decided to move to the UK, and his father was a tailor on Savile Row in London, and my mother's family moved to Kuwait. So that means I grew up in a household where I could hear Arabic, Urdu, Punjabi, and a little bit of Hindi, as well as English being spoken. And that means even though I can understand them more or less, not Arabic, I'll be honest, it's an environment that I grew up listening to lots of different languages, and I found it really exhilarating because when I heard people from my mum's side of the family speaking Arabic, it sounded like they were always arguing, but they weren't. They were just communicating to each other, and that's kind of how it sounded. And yet when they were speaking Punjabi or Urdu, it was a very sort of a smoother language that you heard, but my mum often mixed English with those languages, and I never really noticed, but friends would come over and say, what did your mum just say? So she'd slip in the odd Arabic or Hindi or Urdu or Punjabi word. And then you just say, she's asking if you want Asian omelette. So my parents got married. They lived in the UK. And when my mum was 39 years old, she got diagnosed with renal failure, which means her kidneys stopped working. And I was 14 going on 15. So I was absolutely in those teenage years, as was my twin sister. And I have an older and a younger brother as well. And what I found over the years was it seems that organ donation is a real taboo topic, which means nobody likes to talk about death and taxes. They're just not fun, are they? And nobody likes to talk about organ donation or that topic of needing an organ either. So I just wanted to read this small excerpt from my book because it just gives you a little bit of an idea, because we're having an intercultural immersive evening. So here we go. British culture was so different to Asian and Arab culture, and I could see it at home when Mum communicated it with her friends. Although we grew up enjoying a mixed cultural household, my lived experience was a completely different one to where I was going to venture. I grew up in a home where English, Punjabi, Urdu, and Arabic were spoken. And for me, family life was full of British baked beans, enjoying a cup of tea and a biscuit, and Asian biryani being served with Arabian delights like baklava. It's true. I loved the mix of all of this. The mix of intercultural communities is what made my life so special. It was all around me when I grew up. And the volume of a room full of people talking loudly created a vibrant atmosphere of everyone happily mingling. They were cooking in the kitchen, playing cards, sitting outside together in large groups, chatting away, creating a hive of activity. And the sounds I heard of people speaking, the smells of food, the continuous laughter was good for my heart. And laughter is the key to happiness. Such a rich tapestry of cultures was wonderful to grow up around. So my parents spent 20 years together where my mum was well before she got kidney failure. This is her when she married my dad, Answer Ajaz. And this is her just before she got diagnosed with kidney failure. And as I said, I was 14 going on 15. So here's a picture of my mum when she was healthy. And only 6 years later, you can see that it really is it takes a toll on your body when you're having dialysis, which is what keeps you alive when you have kidney failure. So I think it's important to show this because it's a taboo topic. People don't like talking about it, but it's also important to talk about those difficult topics so that you can see what life is like for a normal, well, we're not really normal, but a family. Mum watched 3 out of 4 of her children graduate. We all went on to, finish university. And it was just when we were 25, my twin sister and I, we had a birthday party just before my mum turned 50. And it was during this time we had a gathering because we wanted to celebrate life. And it was actually just after this that she became really unwell, went into hospital, and then unfortunately didn't come out. And I think for us children, 4 children, and my dad, it was the biggest shock because we didn't believe it was really going to happen, but then it kind of really did, which is that she didn't make it. And I found myself not really getting counseling or therapy or anything to do with managing grief or loss or bereavement. But many years later, because of the pandemic, I found myself writing this book because I wanted to kind of give an insight into what family life was like, get people to validate it who already do work within the health communities with the topic of organ donation to raise awareness. And also just put some recipes at the back of it, which are the Asian omelette recipe and the Pakistani chicken recipe, but you can of course use vegetables if you're vegetarian. And to try to just put some personal stories in there of people from minority backgrounds, to be honest, who have had a difficult time finding a transplant because the number of pool of availability of people is a lot lower. But to say, look, some of these people did get a transplant. These are success stories. Even though it wasn't successful for me and my family, it was for these families. So just put yourself in someone else's shoes who's waiting and see what it might feel like, because it's possible to do something about it, which is my message, which is to say, look, family matters. It matters above all. It's the most important thing. It can be in whichever shape or form you want, because for some people, family isn't blood. It can also be whoever becomes your family in the future that you live with, like a group of friends or anything. But the point is, it's people that you love. And the topic of organ donation is a family matter, and it often isn't talked about outside of the family. So I also called it Family Matters because it's a matter for the family. When something isn't going well, you don't really want to talk about it publicly because it's uncomfortable and you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. And maybe you just don't have the tools and resources to know how to talk about a topic like organ donation. And lastly, the reason I'm trying to raise awareness and highlight this topic is because at the end of the day, in the UK, certainly, it's different in Germany, but in the UK, even though you're automatically on the organ donor register, you have to opt out if you don't want to be on it. And people who are automatically on it or registered their intent and say, I want to be an organ donor, in the end, if your family is around when you've died, they get asked and they actually have a chance to decide whether or not to fulfill your wishes. And they can say no, because we don't think that our dad or mum or sibling wanted really to be an organ donor, so we're going to just say no. And that makes it all a bit awkward because, of course, when someone's died, you don't want to have that conversation. So in the book, I try to address those points and say, let's try to discuss this in a way that you can have a rational conversation while everyone's alive and not put anyone in that awkward position when they've died, because by that time it's all very raw and it's not the best time to ask people things. So I've had the book written, as you can see, because Bernd held it up. I'm getting it translated into, well, it's in English. It's been translated to German. It's been translated to Arabic, and it's being translated to Urdu and hopefully Hindi. And the reason is because those are the sort of intercultural demographic languages, and I think it's important people who are speaking those languages or reading those languages can read the book in those languages. And so that's kind of a big undertaking. It's huge, but like I said, life for me, every day is a challenge, and that's kind of just what I'm here for. So nothing is easy, but that's what kind of makes it oddly fun. And I think it's important to have this book written so that my voice is heard, the story is told. And then what I'm trying to do is to get people interested in, showing some sort of support in the topic so that ultimately it will go on and help save lives. This is just basically the last, oops, she says, sorry. Yeah, this is just me basically saying, if you're interested in showing support, this will be like on the recording later, then you can do that either to help get it translated or to buy it and read it and pass it on. But ultimately, there's lots of talks that I've been giving and people have asked all sorts of uncomfortable questions, but I really don't mind because I've got nothing to lose or nothing to gain. Nothing to lose because my mum already passed away, but I've got nothing to gain because she won't come back, but I've got everything to gain because just by one person having that conversation with 3 different people before they go to bed tonight could make a difference to someone's life somewhere in this world. And if there are 8 billion people on the planet, and if only one person says, I'm going to go and talk to my family about that, then I'm happy, then job done.
Yeah.
And the last, so I've got a couple of like feedback from people who've read the book, but I think it's just basically highlighting the point that people are starting to have conversations with their families. And the best one, I think, came from my uncle, who's like 80 years old, who that generation are the ones that make the difference, the aunties and the uncles in my culture. And he basically wrote this message to his family and said, look, if when I die, if any of my bits are still usable, then please support my decision when the time comes. Because, it's only through reading people's stories and hearing their experiences that you then yourself think, oh, I could make a difference. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to make a difference. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you. Fantastic. Now, a couple of questions probably from everybody else as well, but let me ask the first one. I learned from your book also that organ donation is, of course, a universal issue, but that it's very culture sensitive, and even on the medical side, right? So organs are not necessarily compatible
So
across.
culturally, interestingly,
Yeah, there are barriers. I understood from your book of acceptance in cultures. And could you tell a little bit about that?
yeah, what I realized, which I didn't at the time, was people who are opposed to it or have difficulty in grappling with the topic, which is fair enough for all the right reasons. Usually it's because they don't have so much information, or it's just not entirely clear based on their cultural beliefs or religious beliefs. And interestingly, if you're from like an Islamic background, you might say the argument is that I've heard is people say, well, the body should be buried whole. But if you ask an Islamic scholar, because I did, because I'm like, well, I mean, I have faith, but I'm not like super duper religious. What do I say to these people in my book? And he was like saying things like, well, you're supposed to perform acts of charity as a good deed. So if you are someone who thinks about charity, you give clothes and money and food, that's all donations. And actually, and giving an organ or donating your stem cell tissues, organs or blood are also a form of donation. So if you do that, then you're sort of, one act of kindness is like saving the whole of humanity. And that's how he kind of got me to understand it, which is if it's seen as a principal act of necessity to save a life, then you're not going to be sort of penalized for that in the afterlife if you believe in the afterlife. So that was with Islam. And with other religions like Hinduism and Sikhism, where they believe in reincarnation, people were worried and said, well, what happens if I donate my eyes and then I go to the next afterlife? I don't know what will happen. So I think the way that those answers were addressed by people who've had a transplant have sort of said to people like that, to say, well, if what you've done is wrong, then hopefully you'll be forgiven. And if you can live with that, then in the world that you're in now, where you are currently, then hopefully when you get to the afterlife, that won't happen. Of course, nobody knows for sure, but it's just ways to try to address people's discomfort with a religious topic. Or point of view. And culturally, it really depends on who you are speaking to from a community or a faith background as to where they are and what their view is. But hopefully there's enough people like who've had a good experience who can step forward and say, look, this saved my life, and you wouldn't like it if it happened to you. So if you needed to have help, whether it's a blood or organ donation, would you receive it? And those conversations lead to sort of bigger debates, because for all the right reasons, people have said, do you know how Black people were treated in the US? Do you know how Asian people were treated in the UK? Do you know how children were treated at this hospital? So if you're open to have those conversations and listen to why people have got an aversion to it, then you can also try to help them overcome their concerns. And that's what I try to do, because there is a lot of fear and misinformation, but there's also a lot of validity in why people are opposed to it. So it's just a question of talking to people and trying to have that conversation and say, look, you're absolutely right, but if we just kind of live with that and we don't move forward, then literally we're not doing good to anyone. So if you take the Asian community, for example, everyone wants their children to be a doctor, right? Save lives. But if you say to the parents of those people who've become doctors, would you be an organ donor? They'll say no. And you'll say, well, that kind of goes against the, you want your child to do good. So it's just having those kind of conversations to get people to think slightly differently to what they already do, but with respect, because people who usually are decision makers are older than my generation. And it's a sensitive topic, but it's also a very easy one to talk about when you've, like I said, when you've got nothing to lose or gain from it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure there are questions. Shabeena.
Yeah, so not really a question, but just like two things that yeah, you just brought back a memory actually from when I was younger, and I came home with my little permission slip, and it was about organ donation, and we had to tick like so that the school knew what they wanted to do. And I remember having a conversation with my parents, and for me as a young kid I was like, well, of course, you know. But then of course with mom sitting down and saying, oh, but, and she brought up the religious aspects to it as well, and we had a really good conversation about it. But it was, yeah, it's a lot more complicated, and I didn't really think about it until right now. But for me as a kid, it was just like, yeah, do you want to, I don't need them anyway. So, you know, let's just tick the box. It was just a really simple, like you said, it was to do with you know, charity and saving lives, but it is a lot more complicated. So yeah, no, thanks for that memory, because it's got me kind of readdressing everything again. And also just to point out, before the recording started and before everybody joined, you mentioned a really cool event that you went to, and none of us knew that it even existed. So maybe now that the recording is happening, you might want to mention it.
Sure. So I just mentioned that I had attended the World Transplant Games, which were in Dresden, Germany this year. And the reason that they take place is for everyone who wants to, who's been transplanted. So whether that's blood, stem cell, tissue, or organ, if it's a donor family, they may have already lost someone, but they also attend because they know that there's a high likelihood that 7 people are possibly running around who have their loved one's organ. So I went to this event to promote my book, but really I was saying to everyone who's a transplant recipient, there were 3,000 people there, everyone who's a transplant recipient, I know what it feels like, as they do, to wait. And for everyone who's a donor family, they, like me, know what it's like to lose someone. So I'm somehow in the middle, because I'm not a transplant family and I'm also not a donor family, but I fit in the middle because we all can relate to each other, even though we're from all different parts of the world. And I think that this event, I didn't even know it took place because my book was only released in June, and I was just looking on LinkedIn and it started to be advertised. And I had no idea that these people came together. And a lot of people came to it because they said they could meet, amazingly, they could meet people who had donated to them. which is the actual people, which I didn't even know, but that's what happened. But also people who had received a transplant came over and said, I've been following you on social media. I didn't know who they were. And they just said, even though I've received my transplant, my heart or my liver or my kidney or something, thank you for writing your book, because you wrote about how awfully difficult it was and how awful it all is, but none of us ever did that because we got that second chance for life. And I didn't think of it like that, but I thought, wow, it's really true, isn't it? Because it's very easy to write a happy outcome, a success story, but it's a completely different thing when you're writing about how awful it all was. And I didn't mean to write how awful it all was to be gratuitous or anything, but I think if you don't just say what it's like for a family, then people will only see the happy ending rather than how it really is. So for me, it's like, it's not a big Harry Potter book doorstop. It's like this thick, which is not, it's 164 pages, but it's enough to give people an insight to say, gosh, I can relate to that because I have a family. I know what it feels like. So this event was just a big highlight because it was quite emotionally exhausting at the beginning. On the one hand, I was super excited. When I got back to Berlin, I just burst into tears and I was like, this was all the what could have been and never was. And I don't know if my mother would ever have attended, if we would have ever attended. But the fact that I'm here must mean something, because somehow, without ever knowing it existed, here I am. It was, I didn't even have the vocabulary to describe what it felt like, because there was no one else like me. But I felt really part of their family, somehow, their family network. And that, oh, it's giving me the goosebumps. That's also what was really poignant and significant about attending.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Ryan has a question.
I just wanted to tell Aisha that my mom has been a nurse for over 40 some years, 41, 42 years in the same hospital. So I used to be a nurse too. So this conversation will be happening tonight in my family, because I don't know if they're aware of my wishes and that I would like to donate. I don't know if they're actually aware of that. I don't know if we've discussed that. Number two, I saw your book, Aisha. I saw your book so many times on Amazon. And I had no idea it was you. Oh my goodness. So now I'm actually going to like grab it and I can connect everything now. And number three, there was a Hollywood multi-million-dollar film that was made specifically about this. And they made it into a love story, and they made it into, part of it, like you said, part of it was the tragedy of it, and part of it was the beauty around it. And it had A-list actors, Will Smith, Rosario Dawson, I think Woody Harrelson was in it, like major million-dollar actors specifically about this topic. I don't know if you remember it.
I do.
Yeah. Okay. So
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. And thank you for talking to your family tonight. I hope you will do it. Talk to at least 3 people. Would love it.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being on this program, Aisha.
Thank you for the invitation.
We have 3 other guests tonight, and the common thread, as we said early on, for those who are just joining, is that all of them blend different worlds, as Shabeena put it, and also we're all on very untypical journeys, and also we work in the field of learning, most of us, and sometimes it's also the school of life that teaches us the hardest lessons. And so I'd like to hear from Shabeena a little bit about your journey. How did you get into the field of learning? That was not something you wanted to do when you were a child, was it?
I was terrible at school. And I always, when I spoke to Bernd about me and the fact that I'm doing the job that I'm doing, which is creating immersive experiences to help people overcome their challenges and to have these immersive experiences be a catalyst for change in their lives, which is all learning and transformation. If I had to tell my teachers back in school that this is what I was doing, they'd probably laugh at me because I was so terrible at school. And I was so terrible because it was just not the environment for me at all. It wasn't conducive to the way that I learned. I was more, to be honest, I was more concerned about if the teacher was okay compared to like what it was that they were actually trying to teach, just because of the environment that we were learning in as well. Um, so yeah, so huge complexes about, am I good at school? Am I able to do this? And then somehow through life experiences that just faded away, and I guess now I'm doing what it is that I'm doing. But I wanted to just take a step back, because Caroline and Ryan, what you guys spoke about when you spoke about your garam masalas, I need to ask you, because this is kind of my journey. Um, there's a book called The Defining Decade, and it's super cool, but it's oh, I hate it because it's written for people that are supposed to be in their 20s, but I think it applies to everybody regardless of the age, because it has this concept in it called identity capital, which is basically about living your life and getting as many experiences, relationships, like currencies as possible, so skills, knowledge, relationships, like not going down on the straight and narrow, but just seeing what opportunities presents itself, and then kind of going, oh, that's interesting. And oh, that's interesting. And then later on, it all comes together in this like beautiful pot of life and stories, and what it is you can share with your family, your friends, etc. And as you were talking, I was starting to think about identity capital, because that's really the philosophy that I live by, which is just being able to open yourself up to as many opportunities as possible, and kind of be like a little bit of a happy puppy. And be like, oh, that's really interesting, what's over there, I'll put that in my pocket for later. And so when Bernd and I were talking about the blending of worlds, the blending of worlds that I was going to talk about today was really about the blending of creativity. I came from costume production for film and stage, so that was my degree, learning about theater and promenade theater and forum theater, like all these really cool ways that you can use theater as a way to educate people, but then also the creativity of it. um, I always tell people I thought that I was going to go there to learn how to be a designer, but actually I was going there to learn about the politics of theater and conflict and the psychology of people, because it's just such a beautiful melting pot of people with all these different diverse backgrounds and skills. Um, so that's what I thought I was going to do. And it actually ended up being quite a traumatic experience for me to be in theater at that point. I think I was in a place that, to be honest, I just didn't fit and I just didn't belong. Um, and so with that, once I graduated, plot twist happened in life and I ended up joining the corporate. And I remember telling my friends, I'm leaving the theater world and I'm going to corporate. And some of them call me traitors, because it was like something you're crossing over to the other side, you know? And then I remember joining corporate, and also my first job hiding that side of me, because it was like, oh, wait a minute, am I going to be, I don't come from a business school. I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything about corporate. So, so it was kind of like this dilemma, and where I learned about business and I learned about corporate and I learned about business transformation and strategy, etc., was not by going through school, but by putting myself into the mix of it all, and then just learning as much as possible from the people around me and experimenting and, just doing, which is probably why I wasn't very good, and still I'm not very good at talking about what it is that I do, because I just do. And then people see it. But it was kind of it was really interesting, because an opportunity had arisen for me to do sales tech, and I thought, well, I don't like salespeople, so I don't think I'm going to be great at doing sales, and I know nothing about technology, but I need the practice, and this is an opportunity that's presented itself. So I went there, and then eventually plot twist happened, and I ended up then falling into another tech company, but completely different, less corporate, very creative, very um, playful. And this was the point where I thought, oh, I think this is the place where I can be myself and I can bring a little bit of the creative craziness that comes from being in theater into this world. Um, and I started to do forum theater and bringing actors on stage to help people to learn about business transformation or toxic leadership or diversity, equity, and inclusion. I started to do things like creating psychological experiments for people and chucking them in there, seeing how it is that they behaved, and then allowing them to figure it out, and then guiding them through how it is that they could have adapted in that environment. And that was when people were like, oh, wait a minute, there's something really interesting here because now you're bringing creativity, something into the corporate world that we've never really experienced. And I think that this is something where when Bernd and I were talking about blending the different worlds, and at that time it was really taboo, this idea of bringing creativity into the world of corporate. And I'd like to say it's changing, but it's not as fast as it needs to be.
Mm.
But essentially that's my story of blending the worlds. And it all really started, in all honesty, with me just saying, I'm not going to hide that part of myself. So, yeah, there's something really unique. And it might be a little bit strange, but do it anyway. And then people will start saying, oh, wait a minute, that's interesting. Where did you learn that skill? And then you go, oh, costume production for film and stage. And then I go, oh, okay. And it's exactly the same when you talk to creative people and they want to talk about how to run their businesses, or you talk to authors who are creating, and we've got two here who are creating really cool learning experiences through a book, but then they want to know, well, how can I create other immersive experiences? And then
Mm.
it's that blend of business and corporate with the creativity and craziness of like forum theater, and helping people to kind of break down the boundary of what they think is possible and what it is that they can create.
Mm. Wonderful. Um, I wanted to probably highlight two aspects there, two ideas I have about that. Um, I mean, you mentioned the identity capital, but there's another concept of the outsider bonus. So when you come into a field like the corporate world, um, providing they accept you as an outsider, you bring in so much new momentum into their thinking. And so very often people get stuck because they have their frameworks and they have their procedures, they have their processes, and they've done this forever, and they don't find solutions. And then they need people from outside to come in to kind of think at things with a totally new perspective and
Yeah.
maybe naively, and suddenly, yeah, why didn't we see that? Yeah, maybe that's an idea. And that's also the playfulness you mentioned, right? So it's a shame that so many corporations don't get that playfulness is work, right? So if you want to change something, if you want to find solutions, you have to play with possible solutions before you can actually do it. Otherwise, you fail gloriously. It's better to fail in a game than or in a forum theater or on stage, and then try something else than in real life. And yeah.
Yeah, and we're really in a business of just dealing with complexes.
Mm.
So, as an example, you go to the creative industry, and the complex there is, well, I'm not too sure that I understand too much about business and business strategy, etc. You go into corporates, and then you say, okay, I'm going to teach you about creativity and how to think outside so you can look at different solutions to your problems, etc. And they say, oh, but I'm not creative. And it was really interesting because I remember the first times just standing up to a bunch of people saying, hey, we're gonna talk about creativity. And they're like, oh, we're not creative, we don't know how to draw. And I said, no, 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 no. Okay, in theater, your tools might be your brush and like your like needles and your costumes and your materials and all of that sort of stuff. But really, in all honesty, like when we look at corporate, your creativity is your mind. So how is it that we can like expand your mind? because that's the tool that we're working with. That's the paintbrush, you know. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, okay, I am creative. I just, you know, I just have different tools in that sense.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think also that's a good cue to lead over to Ryan, because playfulness, and then also we have Karina and one of her sons on the screen. So Ryan, you, in your book, Fearlessly Fluent Fast, you claim that we should learn from children, or we should learn like children. So it's the playfulness that at some stage gets lost in the learning. And I have one quote here. I could have had many, but I have one quote from your book. Meaning, no, kids take ownership of their new words and phrases, and so should you. So it's about learning languages, and so kids take ownership of their new words and phrases. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I sure can. I think that thread that you're pulling from Shabeena, what she just mentioned about how when she talks to these corporate professionals and she tells them, let's get creative, and how they immediately go to something childish and not something childlike. Right? Because every single child has imaginary toys and imaginary friends that are sitting around the table and imaginary cars that they drive and imaginary neighbors. So in the realm of theater, since we're talking about the immersive theater of learning, we call this stage anchoring. And this stage anchoring is all invisible. You have a desk there that you're sitting at. You have, invisible employees that are walking around you. You have an invisible phone that you're answering. This is stage anchoring, and it all has its place around you to create this theater of learning in your brain. And so that's what I try to help native English speaking adults. I really try to help them to reach back to that childlike person within them, because that person still exists inside of you, inside of all of us. And that's how I've been able to become fluent over and over again in Chinese, in Spanish, now in the Czech language, which is a Slavic-based language. It really opens so many doors, especially in connecting people that wouldn't usually be connected. So right now there's a global conflict between people that really share a lot of similarities. If we reach back to the 90s, we think about the Hutus and the Tutsis in Africa, and the carnage, the massacre that was in Rwanda. They even made a movie about it, right? Don Cheadle. It was called Hotel Rwanda. I don't know if you guys remember that film, but it had a lot of really big movie star names in that film. And so it was reenacting the massacre or the disaster that was there about two people, two cultures who had intermarried, and they really were the same people. Aisha talked about that with the line that was drawn between India and Pakistan. Oh, you mean the same people? They're the same people, for God's sake. And so right now, there's a line drawn between the same people, Ukraine and Rusko, right, which is Russia. The Czech language actually shares the root language with them. And so I hear people on the street talking in Ukraine. I'm like, hey, I know what that word is. I hear people speaking Russian. By the way, I used to live in Thailand a few years ago. Me and Bernd were talking about this. And Now Thailand is full of refugees. You wouldn't believe it, but on a small little island, Russians and Ukrainians are living together in peace. And I hear in the cafe Russian, and I'm like, hey, I know that word because I speak Czech now. So reaching back to my book, which you just mentioned, I talk about an experience everybody remembers when they first learned to read, either in English or in German or in French. Everybody remembers, or in Punjabi, as Aisha said. And once you learn how to read the stop sign, you're like, oh, I'm good. I can read everything. You start reading supermarket. You look up and you start reading dentist, and you start reading all the signs on the street. And we bug the crap out of everyone around us. That is childlike, not childish. So I'm trying to recreate this type of theater of learning in the mind of our adult learners. And that's honestly how I've become fluent. That's my secret sauce.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, a language, if you learn a language, you start a language from scratch and you learn 2 words, right? So you actually increased your level of the language by 200%, right? In no time, right? And so we should be proud of this progress and not see, oh, I'm so far away from being a native speaker.
Exactly, because that's what children do. Children learn more language on the playground than they do in the classroom. And you might say, well, Ryan, that might be anecdotal evidence. But if I tell you I spent the last year working in a kindergarten, you might think differently. So I actually spent the last year working in a kindergarten in order to prove to my adult language learners exactly what I wrote in the book is real life. So I'll give you one example. One example is this little girl. Her name is Alyssa. Alyssa speaks Armenian at home, but she's in a Czech language school, which is Slavic based. Then on the playground, she's talking to her teacher, which is in English. So my question is, when the teacher is on the playground, is the teacher still the teacher? And the way you know what the answer is by watching the kids interact with the adults on any playground. First thing the kid does is climb to the top of the tallest thing it can find, slide, jungle gym, even a pole that they play the tetherball on. They will climb it and they will say, "Mommy, look at me." And if they have a ball, they will kick it to you and they will say, "Kick it back, teacher, kick it back. Hey, come play with me. Hey, push me higher. Hey, push me on the swing." So the teacher is no longer the teacher once you're on the playground. You're at their level now. They want you to play with them. So trying to create this type of environment as a language coach. I gave you the example of Alyssa. Alyssa was teaching me Russian. And the reason I still remember it is because on the playground, we were on the same level. And I said, "Hey, Alyssa, how do you say this to play? We are playing here." And she looks at her friend and she says, blah, blah, blah. And she says, "Играть, играуска." 1 year ago, she taught me this Russian word, and I still remember it because we were playing, we were using play to learn a new language. So on the playground, they spoke Hebrew, they spoke Spanish, they spoke English with me as the teacher. They spoke Russian, they spoke Czech, they spoke Armenian, and I was also helping them to speak Chinese a little bit. I was trying to toss one extra in there. I guess we'll see later if it worked.
Fantastic. So about your life story, so you're from California, you're now in Prague teaching Chinese. So how did that happen?
A bit like Rahaf, I think it is. a bit like her, she's teaching Arabic. She was born in the Middle East. I think she said Syria. And then she was living in California. And now she's in
Germany.
Germany, is it?
Yes, Germany, yeah.
Germany. And now she's teaching Arabic. So a bit like that. I was living in New York. And this was after 9/11. So we're talking, 25 years ago. And I ended up learning Chinese on the street. And that's why I know Cantonese, because the locals speak Cantonese, but the business people speak Mandarin. And they are as different as English and Spanish, if you can believe that. They are as different as English and Spanish. So they kind of come together a little bit, like mother in English and madre in Spanish. They both start with M. They kind of sound alike. That's kind of how it is. But then there are many things that don't sound alike at all. And culturally, they are very different also. So I'm in New York. I'm volunteering actually, working full-time for this nonprofit. And so every morning I'm saying good morning to all of the workers there in their different languages. And I'm like, okay, I'm up to 10. Oh, I'm up to 20. I'm up to 30 languages. Oh, okay, maybe this is my thing. Maybe this is an actual thing now. And so everything from, like I said, from Vietnamese to Chinese to Russian to you name it. I couldn't keep up with them anymore. Polish. And, I said, okay, maybe I can actually help people with this. Let me try to help people around me. And that's kind of how I fell into it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Could you share with us one hack from your book, one secret story? Because maybe some of us have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder about one language that we actually never learned and we never got.
I want to say one hack. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, but please trust me. You just have to trust me. I've actually tried it and it works. And also in the book, of course, we have a bunch of peer-reviewed neuroscience to back it up. But if you can, Aisha is a perfect example of this. If you can learn multiple languages at the same time, I think it was one of these famous quotes. He says, success is dressed in overalls and looks like a lot of hard work. So most people don't recognize it. So let me tell you, that is one of my secret sauces, keys to success, is learning more than one language at once. I tried it. It works. It's working beautiful for me right now. And I actually found out about it on accident. And because I found it on accident, I said, let me actually research this. And who helped me research it was actually Rachel. Mm-hmm. So Rachel she's going for her PhD right now in neuroscience. And so she also mentioned that this is an actual peer-reviewed thing in the neuroscience community. And so if you can, try that. Wow. And they can be as different as night and day. They could be as different as German and Arabic. They can be as different or they can be similar, like Japanese and Chinese. It doesn't matter. Please just try it. Put more than one language in at once, and you will see magic happen.
Wow. That's interesting. I suppose it's also about making connections and about building your own internal systems, whatever it is. And yeah, wonderful. You mentioned Rachel. I think many of the people here don't know who Rachel is. Rachel Paling, and we met at her conference in Sitges. And Rachel created this thing called Neuro Language Coaching, right? So, and I did a coaching course with her for educators in general. So she combines elements of coaching with elements of neuroscience. Am I right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's and that's also where we spend a lot of time together, is at the conference that's held once per year for people interested in neuro-language learning, neuro-language coaching, and everything to deal with the brain. Honestly, you might as well call it a brain conference because
Brain and heart.
anything and everything dealing with the brain. Yeah.
Yeah, brain and the heart. Yes, absolutely. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks so much for sharing, Ryan. We have a little bit of time for questions in maybe about 10 minutes. So we open it up. You can ask all your questions to everybody here, even to yourselves. But I would like to introduce Rahaf. So, Rahaf, I would have a lot of questions, but I would like you to talk a little bit about your journey because you shared with us before everybody else came in. But I think it's such an interesting story that you could. How did you end up in Heidelberg? I know it's a beautiful town, but it's not the first choice, isn't it?
It was my first choice in Germany. Yes. I don't know. I've always been fascinated about cultures and travel since I was a little kid, and languages. Yeah, I took a sabbatical after the minute I was allowed in my job to take a sabbatical. I'm like, I'm out. So I took a sabbatical. I was supposed to come back after 1 year, and I just took it one step at a time, and I followed my heart. It was always my dream to travel different cultures and learn many languages and teach many languages. Heidelberg was a city that I visited for the first time when I became a US citizen. It was 2019. It's a very special event for somebody who has a Syrian passport, which is the symbolism of a passport that you cannot travel anywhere. So for me, it was like an opening door to the world. Of course, I could have done it also with a green card, but that event meant the world to me. So yeah, I came to Germany to visit my family. I haven't seen them in like 5 years at the time. And they took me to Heidelberg. They live in a nearby city, and they took me to Heidelberg as like a day trip. And I fell in love with the city. I'm like, I want to live here one day. And I have that in me. Like I would make my wishes come true somehow. I just have that kind of attraction in the world. The US was the first country actually I wanted to live in. I was like, I don't see myself here. I belong there. I want to go there. And that's how it happened. I actually won the lottery to go to the US. So yeah. Yeah, so I fell in love with the city. I felt, for me, that's the first calling in a place. Usually it's the environment, the city. And then I connect to different things through that. But yeah, that's what brought me to Heidelberg.
Right. And I will discover Heidelberg next week because Rahaf and I are staging an experience in Heidelberg. So if any of you are in Germany or near Germany or want to fly in from far away, so it's happening next weekend. And Diana knows exactly what we're talking about because she was part of the first walk that we did here in the north of France. And she was also our official photographer. So there's some footage of that as well. And it's a mix between a detective story, an immersive walk, sensory experience, mindfulness, and all the words you can think of. And it's called The Case of the Missing Present. And so Rahaf, you're going to be my colleague as detectives.
Yes, I'm going to be the co-host. Yeah, the brilliant mind of Bernd has invented this case of the present, and it's so inspiring. I just want to share it with the world. I feel like that. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to co-host this event with you in Heidelberg.
And to go back to Shabeena's idea of, I'm going into corporate and I don't know anything about it. The walk I did when Diana was there was in the town I know very well, and now we're going to do a walk in a town I don't know at all.
That's great. That's great. Blending worlds again.
Absolutely. Yes. You also mentioned, Rahaf, that you're working on a framework that you call designing your learning lens. And
Yes, this is pretty new actually. So it's a passionate project that I'm working on multiple project right now. I feel like my brain is full of information, and this project is very like personal. I want to say to me, just because I share a lot with what you've shared, everybody today, like Caroline and Ryan about and Shabeena about different. I've worked in many jobs. Like my resume, if I put every job I worked, it's like, I don't know, it's like the Joker, like that kind of, personality. And you learn so much from it. So I think I wouldn't say I struggled with learning, but I was the one falling asleep in the classroom because I did not feel connected. And I did not fit in the traditional way of teaching, the kind of presentation style, but I fit in very well with whatever interactions, body movement, anything that uses my senses. My name is Rahaf, by the way. It's an Arabic name, and it means sensitive and delicate. And I think I really embody that name so well. And for me, it was all about sensory. It was like I needed movement, I needed touch, I needed visuals, I needed audio. It was everything. So I did not get that, of course, growing up in Syria and Saudi Arabia as my first actually travel experience. That was a bit, very intense, I would say. Not usually I use traumatizing, but I would say intense because it was just a change of worlds where I'm looking to travel and then I'm like to change countries. And then I was, like kind of surprised with the cultural shock and the differences and all of that. But that has shaped who I am today. So I'm very grateful for that experience. And yeah, struggling with, like in different perspectives, like from teachers, different teaching styles, different sharings and all that has kind of formed who I am. I come also from a finance and marketing and accounting background. So I actually did the career change, like self-career change throughout the process, just because I did not like the money. I'm sorry, I'm just, I did not like really, I love the numbers. I just didn't love spending time on screens all day. I'm like, I want people. I love people. So that shifted me to teaching. And then I did not want to become a teacher for the longest time. Like I really struggled with the identity of being a teacher. And for a long time. So I recently became, at peace with that. So for me, I really wanted to create something very personal, very meaningful to every student that comes to my class. So I was privileged enough to have smaller classes, whether adults or, children. And I would just connect with them on a personal level. And that's how I developed my teaching style based on their learning preferences. And of course, they're children, they don't know how to communicate their learning preferences. So I would have to ask certain investigative questions in a playful way that I will connect me to them and use that to kind of inform my designing for my classes. And that's how I started with experiential learning. Honestly, I did not know about a field that exists with that name until now, until recently, which is, I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, that's how right now building that learning lens, basically, it's always usually we use it for teachers, right? Like to kind of inform teachers. I want to now empower the students. I want to like, okay, let me help you figure out how you learn best, whether you are a 12-year-old or like a 6-year-old. I don't care. We want to find a way that would work best for you. So this is where I'm doing now the research. So there's a lot of work involved right now. But yeah, this is what inspired the Designing Your Learning. I want people to empower their learning by figuring out how they learn best rather than, following the herd or what's trendy or what's working for everyone, or it doesn't have to work for you. If it works for 99% of the people, it doesn't have to work for you. And I want this to be very personalized. So yeah.
Wonderful. And I see the connection, the lens, the detectives, and so on. So
absolutely, yeah.
Right. Conscious of the time, so we have 10 minutes left. And I had 4 guests, so there was a lot of sharing, and it was inspiring, fascinating, and also we could see all the variety but we could also see common threads. But all the others didn't get much chance to speak yet. So I would like to open it up for remarks, questions to any of the speakers, or ideas. Maybe there is something you would like to do tomorrow to be not childish, but childlike, or maybe something you would like to do to help your learners or your colleagues to find their own lens, or maybe you would like to blend something, or maybe you would like to bring in the creative side somewhere. So let's open it up.
Well, I'd like to say it really resonated with me what Ryan said and what you sort of reiterated about being childlike and, you know, why we play. And that's sort of the work of our life is, like you said, experimentation and play. And that really resonated with me, Ryan. So thank you. And I enjoyed the talks here immensely.
Mm. Yes, and talking about childlike, we come to you in a minute, Carolyn, but that also kind of reminded me of Aisha's book. And because, I mean, I didn't know your story until I read the book, but I met you as a person. And and I realized after reading the book how influential your mother and your family, also your twin sister, were for you to become the person you are. And you're a very unusual person. So they allowed you to be this unusual person. They didn't want to kind of push you into a framework. Is that right?
Yes, it's only now that I'm older, talking to cousins, that they said you don't realize how much freedom you had compared to us. And it's true because we grew up in the UK in a very strict household, but nevertheless, we were allowed to do anything if it was to do with supervision from adults. So we were in all the musical choirs and orchestras and all the sports activities, anything that was in school or outside. But as long as there was an adult there, we were allowed to do it. We weren't allowed to go out. We weren't allowed to have any sleepovers or go to any. And I think it's because my mum, and particularly my mum, my dad left it to my mother to do the parenting, really, and didn't really get involved. But it gave us a lot more freedom than I realised until I was a lot older. Because in hindsight, when I look back at it, I thought we were growing up in a super strict authoritarian household, but we obviously weren't. So what you see when you're young through those eyes is very different to what you see as an adult. And that makes an impact as to how you are later in life with what you allow yourself to do. Because had we really been kept inside, we never would have experienced the opportunities that we did today, because we just would have been too afraid. So I think that says something. My mother let us do judo, which what my Asian cousins obviously said, I can't believe your mum let you do that. But yeah, I'm definitely unusual.
Thank you. Carolyn, you had your hand up earlier.
Aisha's comment about her mother plays into my comment that a lot of cultures don't allow you to make mistakes.
Mhm.
And so learning is really can be very culturally based. And again, back to me being a US American, and I didn't have to always be so responsible. I could do these different things and not be negatively critiqued. My parents weren't looked at as really bad parents because they let me do this. But it's the same with learning, that sometimes we really have to protect our learners or set up the environment so that they really can make mistakes without having it be the way their culture would have it be such a bad thing to do. So since we're talking about cultures, that's what I throw out there in terms of learning as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that's right. So we often, when we're in a learning situation, a classic learning situation, we learn in order not to mess up, right? Like piano lessons, right? No, you played that wrong. Instead of encouraging people to just try things out and okay, that was the wrong note, but it sounded soulful, or you played it with a little bit of feeling or something like that.
Or how creative of you.
Absolutely. Aliona. Oh, you're on mute.
First of all, thank you so much. As always, a great session and so inspiring, and many things resonated with me. Tried to be mindful of the time. A question. I am really inspired to create experiences for learners, and I'm really intrigued by the idea of childlike learning. But the issue that I encountered, and whenever people would tell me adults can learn a language like a child, I'm too old to learn a language, and I would always tell them, you can learn as a child. The problem that you may have is that you don't have as much time as a child. So this is my question. Do you think creating experiences to learn, is it really much more time consuming for the facilitator to prepare everything, and then during the training for both to facilitate the thing, to introduce it, to debrief it, like using the metaphors instead of just providing raw content?
I have a burning answer on my lips, but I would like to open it up to everyone else. Does anybody want to answer that? No, everybody wants to know my answer. Yes, Ryan, please.
Sure, I had to unmute. Sorry. Sure, I'll jump in there a little bit. You know, as a father and you know, a business owner and adult doing all the adult things, speaking engagements and running my own workshops and all of these things, it can be a real juggling act, right? And I still have to make time for my wife and to water the relationships that mean the most to me. My mom is going through cancer treatment right now, sadly. So that's another big thing to devote time to. However, what I'm noticing is that as adults, we really tend to find the time for the things that we really want to do. So it's a level, and everybody's situation is different. So not taking that into account, right? All the languages that I've been able to learn, I've learned them as an adult. And that's been something that I've had to work into my schedule. So I talk about that in the book, that creating an immersive experience, generally for a child has the same amount of hours in the day that we do. They're in school for the same amount of time that we're generally at work, minus maybe 1 hour or two. But they themselves, without any backing, without any nudging, without any pushing, they create these immersive experiences themselves. And so what I did as an adult was just mimic that. So I'll give you an example. A buddy of mine, his name is Steve. Steve said, hey, while we're walking together after work, while we're walking home, I'm going to create an immersive experience for you. So we were doing something that we normally do every day. It didn't take any more time than usual. And he created this immersive experience for me that actually allowed me to make connections that I didn't make before. And I talk about that in the book. It's the infamous word, defang.
Yeah.
And defang wasn't so mysterious once we got to where we were going, when we got to the door and it was snowing. So this is another thing. You're making all of these connections in your episodic memory. And of course, we have different types of memory. We have, and this is mostly what adults complain. I can't remember what I learned the last time. And it's because you're not tapping into these 4 different types of memory. You have episodic memory, semantic memory, working or procedural memory. We normally call that muscle memory. And then we have the secret door. It's the secret door. You know how in the theater of learning, there's a library, there's been a murder, and the murderer goes to the library of books there, and he just tips one book back, and a secret door opens, and he escapes. So this is the secret door to memory, is your, I call them hooks in the book, but it is your 5 senses. Put as many hooks into this word as possible. So your olfactory senses, your sense of touch, your sense of taste. How did it feel? Was it fuzzy? Was it smooth? Or did it have bumps all over it? So putting as many hooks as you can into a particular phrase or a word or an idiom really helps it to stick. And those are the types of things that you will see in a movie like Ratatouille. At the end, the food critic tastes the ratatouille that the actual rat made, and he is immediately shot back to his childhood when his mother would make ratatouille for him as a kid. And of course, they got the best review in Paris, right?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ryan. Now, I feel like it's a bit like being in a pub in the UK when they say it's closing time, but we still feel like hanging out. So I think we can add a couple of minutes, but anybody who needs to jump, don't feel guilty, right? So I'm conscious of time, but we have such an interesting discussion. We could just go on for a couple of more minutes,
I just want to add to Ryan's actually, to this point about learning. I have the worst memory probably from the people I know. And for some, like sorry, I lost my thought. It's okay. So I have the worst memory. I devoted my life literally for language learning and teaching, and I coach like people about it and all of that, but you always find a way. That's the thing. Like even if you have a bad memory, which is a very, usual excuse, including myself, you can always find a way.
Yeah, I just a very one sentence answer, then we come to Shabeena and Diana. One sentence answer to Aliona, I would say experiential learning is not necessarily faster, but it's deeper. I don't know if that resonates. So it sticks more. So you can take in a lot of information in classic learning, but then it's gone next week. Whereas if you create those memory hooks, as Ryan says, then it's more meaningful.
Yeah.
Diana, you had your hand up first, and then we come to you, Shabeena. We can't hear you. Maybe it's a connection. You can type it in the chat if you want. Okay, no, we can't hear you at all. Type it in the chat. In the meantime, we go to Shabeena. Type your question in the chat, and then we'll answer it. So, Shabeena.
Yeah, it was just to continue to answer the question about learning and immersive, etc. And I think what everybody sometimes forgets is that learning isn't about being in the classroom. I think we're taught that you have to go to a classroom in order to be able to learn, because that's what you do in school, right? You get up in the morning, you put your backpack on, you put your school uniform on, and then you go and then you learn. And then all of a sudden, when you leave, the learning doesn't stop. You're still learning. It's just what is it that you're learning? And so I'm really passionate about this idea that to remind people that you're constantly learning. It doesn't stop. It's just about what are you intentionally learning about, or what is it that you intentionally want to experience. So as an immersive experience designer, it's then saying, okay, well, maybe you don't have a specific opportunity to be able to learn the skill that you need in your day to day because you're not put into that aggressive conflict management or that aggressive toxic leadership. And so, how do we create that experience for you? Because that is the skill that you need at a specific time. And I'm just going to take myself as an example, just like two things. I'm learning Portuguese at the moment. I just moved to Lisbon 9 months ago. And I'm a very fussy learner because I don't like this idea of learning in a classroom confined. And what I said to my teacher, I said, I want to learn how to order a coffee when I need a coffee. So I want to learn the numbers when I'm in town. And like anybody who's been to Lisbon knows the amount of stairs that we have. So I learned the numbers walking the stairs to get to the place where I need to get my groceries so I can learn how to say banana because I want my happy fruit that day, you know. And so that is me saying, okay, well, actually, I'm in an environment now where I need to learn and I want to learn the skill of how to learn a language. So how is it that I can play in my environment to be able to do it? But then at the same time, when I was in the UK and I wanted to carry on my Portuguese lessons, it was like, okay, well, how is it that I can create the environment that I need in order to be able to learn the skill? And so that is the thing that I encourage is, I 100% agree with what Bern said. It's very much about saying, um, you know, do you want it to be impactful? Then yes, for a facilitator or whatever role you place yourself in, it is a lot more hard work to be able to create those environments, to create those story worlds. But the memories and the connections that you're making, that sensory experiences, it really means that you have a long lasting impact because we learn through emotions. And if you don't have the emotion, then you're not gonna have that connection and that memory to it. And I think just one more thing before I get off my little soapbox is learning. We learn our complexes. So there is not one point, and the biggest thing that changed my mindset when it came to can I learn and am I clever enough, all of these things, is we know that we've learned our complexes of are we able to learn because we can currently all walk. And at no point, walking was one of the first skills that we needed to learn to do.
Mm.
And at no point when we were learning to walk as a baby did we say, oh, this walking thing, I'm bad at it. And because I'm so bad at it, I think I'm just going to crawl through life. We didn't even have that thought. We were just like, I'm going to keep falling, I'm going to keep getting up, and I'm going to continue. So anytime you need the evidence that you can learn, just go back to your baby self. And it's that childlike thing that just allows you to be able to do it. And sorry, I said that was one thing, but one more thing. What Ryan spoke about, this childlikeness, and since we were all talking about languages, and I'm learning a language at the moment, it's so funny because one of my biggest deterrent about learning a language was, am I able to pronounce the word correctly? Is the person going to be able to understand me? So you're more comfortable then writing than you are actually speaking, which is such a contradictory because you learn the language to speak, right? And so when you're a kid, I remember walking through the town and there was a sign that said to let. And I was like 5 years old and I said, to let toilet. And I said to my mom, toilet. And my mom was like, no, that's toilet, but that's to let. But I didn't get it. I didn't feel bad about mispronouncing the word, or not pronouncing it correctly or not getting it correct. I just learned, oh, okay, next time that sign says to let. And so I think that's why I love immersive and experiential, because the sooner you can break that barrier to getting rid of that fear, that complex that you've put yourself in, or you've that boundary that you've put up for yourself, the quicker you are to actually learn what you're there to learn, because that's the first hurdle, is just to break down that boundary. And the way to do it, in my experience, has always been the immersive ways.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry we didn't get to Diana's question. We didn't hear her question, but I'm curious to know what it was. You will share with us somehow. And thank you everybody for coming. And thank you to all my guests, Rahaf, Ryan, Shabeena, and Aisha. All good luck with your work and with your books as well. And with Aisha already dropped out, but for the cause she is defending and the awareness she is raising. And yes, speak to your family, Ryan. And and thank you so much. We already have a date for the next one, which is the 20th of October, with the one and only Jan Keck, all the way from Germany. I met him in Barcelona at the Change Days, and he's brilliant. And he's writing a book about ice melters, not icebreakers, but ice melters. So he will be with us next time. Thank you all, and the recording will be available soon. And have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.